I just brought the beast out of hibernation. It's been 4 months, and I am really happy. In fact, I should call this car Happier too, because this really makes me happy. If any of you have ever owned one of these air suspension Mercedes, you're going to say, oh yes, Ken, I understand why you're happy, but look at that. 4 months, and the car is up. No leaks in the air suspension because it was fixed right. If you have to go back and see my old past episodes where I went through the whole process of completely restoring the air suspension on this W109 chassis, 300 SEL 6.3, okay, affectionately known as the Beast. But we're getting ready for some spring driving here, so there's a number of things we're going to do on it, and I'm going to start in this video playing around with the door. Look at this. I can't get the door open. And this has been like this, who knows, 15 years maybe, or 12 years, or however long till this left door last opened. And this isn't something I haven't even messed with since owning the car, because I've been working on all the mechanical things. But now that we want to do some spring cruising here shortly, I want to make sure all these little things are fixed, like the sunroof, and make sure the doors are all lubricated, working properly, make sure all the power windows are working and so on. So we're going to tackle this door right here, because if I pull on it as hard as I can with this button all the way in, it doesn't open. If I mess around with the lock here, it's real stiff, doesn't want to go up and down. Even if I pull the inside door handle here, try to do this by myself, no, it's not even moving, okay? So what are we going to do? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of go through a little phase of doing a certain number of procedures to see if we can get this left rear door open. So I like to start out with a stuck door situation like this, doing the easy things first. And the easiest thing first is to get a helper inside the car. He's going to put some muscle on the inside of the door by using his shoulder and a little bit of padding to come up and push hard on the inside of the door while he operates the inside handle. I'm going to operate the outside handle, and I'm going to pull real hard. We're going to try that first before we do anything else. Okay, I've got my helper inside the car. I've instructed him to use the shoulder, the upper arm and shoulder, to push hard against the armrest and that upper edge on the door panel. We want to be a little careful not to damage the door panel. He's going to be pulling the inside door pull out while I get over here and yank on the outside door handle while pushing the button in. Let's see what happens. Okay, go ahead. Oh! Look at that. Success. Thank you, sir, very much. All right. Look at that, the door check strap still works. Let's talk about what just happened and why I was successful using that method. Doesn't always work. I've done this a lot over the years on these older Mercedes, and sometimes it doesn't come that easily. Now, the reason it worked on this particular door is I'm looking at this conical cone down here. It's all rusty. You can see how corroded and rusty it is. So it was just stuck in the striker. Now, other times, you have a problem with the latch. So if it's a conical cone and striker issue and the door is just kind of seized, this force to get it open often works. But if the latch or catch assembly down here is somehow jammed or stuck so it won't release, then you got another problem. Now, I had one guy tell me, Kent, I've had success. He explained it this way. He said, I put a block of wood here and I get a rivet gun or a chisel, an air chisel, and get it up against this block of wood and try to vibrate this whole mechanism to kind of shift the latch around inside and get enough to get it open. You might try that. I've never tried that, but I thought that was pretty clever because, I've used the vibration method before when I have a stuck tumbler in a key that won't turn. So maybe that would work on a door latch mechanism that was not coming loose inside. But most of the time, if it won't come by the method I just showed you, you're going to have to get lubricant into that latch mechanism. You're going to have to get lubricant in here and down inside. And one fellow said, well, just start spraying penetrant, something like rust buster or seafoam. Just keep spraying and soaking. But the problem with the 108 and 109, you spray, you can't really, you need to be spraying on this side. If you spray on the outside of the door down this crack, it's never going to get over here into the latch. It just isn't going to happen. So a lot of times you'll have to go inside and remove the door panel. Now there's a number of these models where you really can't get the door panel off completely with the door closed. Now on the 108 to the 109, the 114, the 115, they have this trim piece along the top. So if you can remove the wood like here on this 109 and pop that trim piece off right here, this piece right here, pop it up, and you can kind of pull the panel back and start squirting lubricant down in here. You may have to do it 2 or 3 times. You may have to let it sit 2 or 3 days to let it really soak up and just keep working the latch, working the lever. And I've had one case where none of that helped. What I had to do is destroy the door panel. In that particular car, I just couldn't, I thought about trying to take the whole door off, but even if you pull the front hinges, you've got this latch mechanism jammed, so you can't really get the door out far enough. So I had to say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice the door panel because I had to get the whole door panel off to get to the rods and to get way down in here into the lower part of the latch because the rod mechanism was not releasing it. So if you have a stuck door, always start with the simple things first, then move on up to the more difficult, which in the final analysis will be removal of the door panel so you can adequately get lubrication down in here. So I'm going to right now, I'm not going to close the door yet. I'm going to clean off this conical cone. I'm going to shoot lubricant down in here. I'm going to clean that door striker assembly completely and lubricate that. And then we're going to close the door again and see if it works. But the only long-term solution to these type of problems, and I've said this over and over again, is when you get one of these old cars that's 25 to 30 years and older, you really need to remove every single door panel. I'm going to repeat that. When you get the car, you need to remove every single door panel. You need to go in there and lubricate the door checks. You need to go in there and lubricate the window regulator mechanism, the teeth and the gears. You need to completely lubricate, soak the inside of the latch assembly with spray lubricant. You can't do it from the outside. You need to clean the bottom of the door. If there's any rust along that bottom edge where the water drain holes are, you need to coat that with Miracle Paint. You need to do all those things when you first get one of these cars. 'Cause I've seen people just ignore the problems. Pretty soon your regulators don't work, your doors don't open, but worse yet, you get rust out along that bottom part of the door if you ignore it. So I'm just going to encourage you, if you have an old Benz, we're talking about the 123 and older primarily. You need to take those door panels off and do complete inside door service on all 4 if you want to avoid future problems. Now, in the next video on the Beast, I think I'll go ahead and pull the door panel off and I'll walk you through that process so you can get an idea of some of the things you should be looking at in your own old Benz if and when you get your door panels off. This is one of the worst I've seen. It appears that the rust is so bad it's actually rusted the plating off. So I've got pitting here. I'm going to try to start out with Scotch-Brite pad to see if I can polish this out. I don't really want to use sandpaper on it if I don't have to. But I'm just going to polish this one area. Yeah, sure enough, I got some pretty heavy pits right in here. So that's the reason why this particular door was stuck. And this is the culprit right here. I think the latch mechanism is moving. It's real stiff. So I will clean up this cone as best I can. And then once that's clean, I'll come back and we'll squirt some penetrant down in here and see if we can get this loose. And then clean up the striker just to see if we can get the door to open and close before we pull the panel off. I'm also going after the striker with some Scotch-Brite pad. What I've done is I've soaked this with Rust Buster. I'm just going to lightly rub on this outside. This is cosmetic only. But I want to make sure no corrosion is down on this lower catch point. I'll just lightly rub on this plating here, see if I can get some of this rust and corrosion off. I'll let that soak for a while. I'm going to roll the Scotch-Brite pad up into a point. And we're going to go after this. Now this is brass, so this shouldn't be severely corroded in here. It's going to be, you know, junked up with the rust from the cone, but you know, if I go in here and use one of these swabs, you can see I'm already starting to get that cleaned out. Try to get this to as small a point as I can. Shove it in there. And having the Scotch-Brite pad soaked up with penetrant helps to cut through that rust and crud inside there. So just roll that back and forth like that. Okay, now I'm starting to see brass instead of rust. Now I'm going to take my rust penetrant and I'm going to spray right down into this latch assembly. I'm going to try to get in the crack so it goes down inside. I'm going to hold a rag here to keep it from running down the side of the door, but I'm going to really try to get in there and soak this up. I might even be able to go into this crack here. Yeah, see if we can get a little running down inside from that corner there. That's not going to be that successful, but in the end, even if you do this, I'm going to once again repeat, in the end, you really want to remove the door panel here and completely spray the whole mechanism and the rods right in this area here. Now I'm going to wipe everything down. You know, I'm using these space age wipes. I just love these because they don't tear like paper towels, but look at how I can get in here and even snag it on the catch mechanism, and you're not going to tear up this particular paper. It's just amazing. Look at that. Now this is working much freer, see? Okay. Flip it up, it's locked. Push the button in, it's releasing. So that means I'm safe to close the door. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put the lubrication on it. This is synthetic grease. I'll just keep lubing this up a little bit with this swab. I'll come up and put a thin coat on here. This won't be the final lubrication, but it's going to get enough to make sure that'll work its way into that latch. I'll wipe the striker down here. Let's get into this tapered hole here. Clean that out best I can. Okay. Now we'll get some lubrication in here. And we'll put a little bit on the bottom. Okay, now the other thing we're going to need to do, of course, is lubricate the door hinges. But at this point, I think we can go ahead and test this to just see how well the door will open and close now. Okay, now for the test. This is kind of like cross your fingers. Let's make sure this thing can close and open. Not bad. And look, just a simple release. Oh, look at that. Wow. I haven't even really lubricated the hinges. I did spray just a little bit of coil oil down in the hinge points because a little bit later on I'm going to use a grease gun to grease those hinges. But look at this. Just let go of it here from about 8 inches away. Let's try 4 inches away. Oh, not quite. 6 inches? Look at that. That's what we like about Mercedes doors, right? So I lubricated the check strap just a little bit from the outside, and that's feeling a lot better. So now the real work begins. I've got my trusty lubrication kit here with all my different lubricants right handy, and we're going to start opening every door panel and going in there and lubricating everything in sight. So we won't have problems with these doors for years to come, because of course I'm not going to leave this out in the rain anymore like the previous owner did. So this is going to be quite a bit of work. I think you take a good solid Saturday, figure about 1.5, maybe 2 hours a door to the max. That will depend a lot on whether you have some rust along that bottom inside edge where the drain holes are. I'd recommend you get some of our miracle paint, even just a small pint, before you begin, so you can coat that to prevent the rust from growing. And then pick up some lubricants. If you be sure to check out my lubrication kit on my website. It has every lubricant in here that you're going to need to do this kind of job, and then just go through each door, get the panel off, clean everything up. Make sure if you have the panel off and that plastic liner's damaged, make sure you either replace it. You can use visqueen, heavy mill clear plastic, and remake one of those plastic liners if you have to, and use spray adhesive, spray glue, to go ahead and re-glue the plastic on inside the door. So in the next video in the B series, I'll come back with one of these door panels off, and I'll kind of go through step by step some of the things I'm doing and what I'm looking for, and some of the types of lubricant I will use for each component.